Okay, so our lesson is chapter 56.5, which is sustainable development and the interconnections it has with human lives and conservation biology.
All right.
No.
Well,
Excellent.
so these are some keywords you should know for this chapter. If you were sitting close to the classroom, Tiffany, maybe you could see them without squinting like you did. So sustainable development is the economic development that meets the needs of people today without limiting the ability of future generations to meet their needs, and that helps preserve biodiversity and keep the ecosystem of biosphere alive. Biophilia is an innate instinct of an evolutionary product of natural selection acting on a brainy species whose survival depended on a close connection to the environment and a practical appreciation of plants and animals. This is a very intense topic that we're going to go more into later, and it really just helps connect this entire chapter together. And the biophilia hypothesis goes along with it, which is that there is an instinctive bond between humans and other living systems. And finally, the biosphere is simply the region of the surface, atmosphere, and hydrosphere of the Earth occupied by living organisms.
So one of the primary sections in this, actually one of the primary subdivisions in this section has to deal with sustainable development. And primarily sustainable development is an intergenerational kind of thinking ahead. So what sustainable development attempts to do is it attempts to use several disciplines, including scientific and non-scientific research, to help us better manage our present practices and resource consumption so that later generations have a better quality of life than they are presently going to have. If you remember yesterday's lecture, Matt Laverty had a very cynical outlook on life because at our present rate, our practices with deforestation, mineral extraction, and oil burning are essentially going to doom the future generations. So what sustainable development tries to do is it tries to increase the life quality of future generations by finding ways in which we can manage and use our resources so that future generations can use the same ways to manage those resources, and in that way they improve our life quality. Now the reason conserving our resources improves life quality is because that we as humans are very much dependent on the biosphere. We depend on it for food, we depend on it for shelter, we depend on it for a lot of medicines and present practices. Like if we lost trees all of a sudden, we would essentially die of deoxygenation, or we would not be able to build properly. If we ran out of oil, essentially our economy would collapse. We would have no methods of transportation. So sustainable development is finding alternative ways than the present practices we have in order to improve our life quality and the life quality of other generations. And that is why there's a lot of push and outreach now to find these sustainable alternatives. And one of the major ones is the Sustainable Biosphere Initiative, which has been formed by the Ecological Society of America. And the goal of this initiative is to acquire the basic ecological information needed to develop, manage, and conserve resources as responsibly as possible. And this includes studies in global change, ecological processes, and diversity. However, these sustainable alternatives are not an easy goal to achieve because they are so interconnected with so many different disciplines and interests. On the one hand, you have iron triangles and sub-governments of people who want to keep these present practices because these practices get a lot of short-term gain, and it makes people very rich. The only problem is it'll make you rich for a short time. They're not looking forward to the fact that other people will have to deal with the consequences of their actions. The other problem is that it's interconnected with a lot of different disciplines. So not only do you have to compile scientific data, but you have to get politicians to agree with it, you have to get the normal people to agree with it, and you have to get the financiers to agree with it. And that's why this is a very difficult and ambitious goal that the Ecological Society of America is undertaking.
All right, so to go along with that, there is a case study that was conducted in our book on Costa Rica and its ecosystems. And basically it found that through conservation and by improving human condition, they've been able to see an increase in the sustainable development pathway. So conservation was done by government and non-government organizations to improve rainforests and the conservation of endangered and threatened species. And the restoration of biodiversity, which is modifying human-altered ecosystems to their original natural state, has been a key component in the sustainable development of Costa Rica. And improving human condition has been a major factor in keeping the people alive so that they can attain this goal. And indicators of human living conditions include infant mortality rate and life expectancy, as well as literacy rates. So this graph from our book shows that there's an increased life expectancy as well. Life expectancy goes up as infant mortality goes down. And this has helped Costa Rica figure out ways to battle disease. And they've gotten their infant mortality rate down from 170 to 9 deaths per 1,000 live births. And life expectancy has raised from 48 to 78 years of age. And the literacy rate has raised drastically, and in 2004 it was 96%, which was almost even with the United States. So Costa Rica is seen as one of the most successful cases of sustainable development that we have today.
Alright, so in a second I'm going to give you these little sheets to read, skim through, and then discuss off of. But the next topic I kind of want to discuss is biophilia and the biophilia hypothesis. So going off of, kind of going back to what Andrew said about how we need to preserve the earth and sustain it, it is because like the main reason that we do that is